Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Skis, and I'm the Director of Media for TAPS. Thank you for joining us today for our volleyball preseason meeting. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, but first I've got some housekeeping issues to address. So first thing, this webinar is being recorded. You're going to receive an email later today with a link to that recording. Second, if you have any questions, please use the questions feature in the GoToWebinar interface. We're going to try to answer those as we go through the presentation, but if we don't get to yours right away, there is a general Q&A at the end of the presentation. We'll get to you there. If email is easier for you, you can send any questions during the webinar to info@taps.biz. We're keeping an eye on that inbox, and we're going to pass those questions along to our presenters. But if we don't get to your question today, or if it's just too specific to answer appropriately in this venue, please send us an email again at info@taps.biz or call us at the office. Third, we've got some reference handouts for you today. If you can see the handouts tab in the GoToWebinar interface, you're going to see a couple of documents listed. You can click on those to open them in your browser, and you can download them from there. If you have any trouble, please let me know using the questions interface. We'll reference those handouts a little bit later on, but just wanted to tell you where they were. Joining us today from the TAPS office is Brian Bunselmeyer, TAPS Executive Director. Robert Huckabee, Associate Director and Director of Compliance, Steve Prudhomme, TAPS Associate Director, and we've also got Will Dixon, who's in charge of our live broadcasts. He's helping us out behind the keyboard over there today. Before I hand it over to Brian, I've got two quick questions for everybody in attendance. First things first, we'd like to know what your school classification is. You should see the poll on your screen, if you could answer that real quick. All right, I'm going to close this poll. And the second thing we'd like to know before we get started, what is your role at school? Are you an AD, a head coach, an assistant coach, other faculty or staff, or are you not a staff member at a TAPS school? Please let us know. All right, I'm going to close this poll and hand it over to Brian.
Just want to echo what John said. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to tell you a few things you probably already knew. We're going to try to enlighten you on a few things you didn't know. And as with any in-service, if you can walk away with a little more information than what you started with, I think it's been a good day. Hopefully it won't be too painful as we work through the process. We're going to start today with going through the TAPS rules and National Federation rules, and we'll finish up with the changes that COVID is going to require for the volleyball season for 2020. So again, thank you for joining us here today. We're excited to be talking about reopening. We're excited to be talking about bringing volleyball back into the fold for 2020. And again, thank you for joining us here today. Robert?
All right, thank you, Brian. We're going to jump right into some of the most important things, or the dates that are coming up that are most relevant. If we'll jump to that next slide, Will. Remember right now, if you haven't started school yet, okay, prior to September 7th, if you haven't started school yet, you're still in summer rules. And we've had a lot of information out there in webinars that have addressed your limitations on hours in contact with your students, equipment that can be used, and all those kinds of things. So if you haven't started school yet, you're still in summer rules. If you have begun school or you're about to begin school prior to September 7th, then you're still under those summer rules with regard to limitations on hours and restrictions, but you can make your practices mandatory. So that's the big difference. You're voluntary summer rules until you start classes, but once you start classes, whether that's in person or virtual, then you'll move into still the summer rules, but you can make your workouts mandatory. You can certainly have tryouts at that time. And then when we move into September 7th, prior to that, no practices with other schools, no scrimmages or games. But then as we move into September 7th, jump to those important dates that are coming up. That's first day for fall activities. And then September 10th in volleyball, that's when you can begin your first games or tournament or scrimmage. That's your choice, but on September 10, you can start rolling it out there and playing scrimmages, games, or tournaments. On November 5th, toward the end of the season, we'll do a season-ending webinar. We'll wrap up the regular season. We'll get ready to move into the playoffs. We'll have information for you at that time about the playoffs and the championships. More information than we have as we sit here today. November 5th for all classifications is district certification. November 16th will be our Final Four webinar. For those who have been to the Final Four the last few years, you know, past few years we've had a conference call with the coaches and ADs who qualify for our Final Four tournaments. We're going to move that to a webinar format this year, give you a little more information, give you some documents and details, and then allow you, as always, to ask questions and get you prepared for those championships. Our championships this year are going to be November 18th through 21, and then December 1st, that will be our volleyball all-state selection meetings. Our championships this year, the way we have them scheduled, we have 1A and 2A semifinals are on November 18, and their championships will be the next day on the 19th. And then on the 19th, we'll have 3A and 4A semifinals, followed by their championships on November 20th. And then 5A, 6A, their semifinals will be on November 20th, followed by their championships on the 21st. We're going to jump to brackets now, and Steve's going to tell us a little bit about what to expect with brackets coming up.
Yeah, our target date is September 15th for the release of the brackets. We would like to say it's much like any other year, but we're going to be taking into account how many teams are playing, what their plans are. So be ready for some things that may be a little bit different. COVID, we don't know which way it's going to take us, but what we're going to do is put together the best bracket we can, and they're all subject to change, obviously, if something happens as the year goes on. And also as we get down to the Final Four, we're hoping to return to the same locations that we had this year. We're talking to them, but again, that's another variable that we're doing. So again, look for the brackets around the middle of September, and also be ready to see something that might be a little bit different. Brian?
I think on the brackets as well, just a reminder, a lot of folks are quick to print off a copy of it and say, hey, right off the bat, it's not going to change. This year, with schools that may be affected by COVID as we go forward, the brackets may indeed change as we go if schools can't compete in district play, et cetera. So again, brackets are going to be a very important thing. I know those of you that are already thinking postseason wise, but as we get into travel and other considerations, the board and our athletic executive committee will sure give us the help there. John, you got a couple more poll questions here for us?
Yes, sir. Folks, next question, we would like to know, how many years have you coached at your present school? I'm going to launch that real quick. All right, I'm going to close this one, and we would also like to know, how many years have you coached in TAPS total? All right, looks like votes are slowing down. I'm going to close this one and hand it back to Brian.
Thank you all for filling out the polls. We appreciate that. Again, appreciate you joining us here today. We'll try to roll through the TAPS and National Federation rules, make it as painless as possible, but sometimes it's kind of like going and getting your driver's license renewed. You got to stand in line if you can't do it online. I got that opportunity to do that last year before they closed everything down. So TAPS rules, the basics. TAPS governs student and coach eligibility. We govern a playoff and potential opponent eligibility, and we govern the ball you use, and we govern several other things. But the basics, we're going to tell you who you can play on your team, who can coach your team, who you can play as an opponent, and then several various and sundry other things. So we're going to jump in right off the bat, talk about what interscholastic competition is. So volleyball obviously is a club select opportunity outside of the school year. During the school year, it's interscholastic competition. That includes scrimmages, tournaments, and games. So scrimmages, tournaments, and games, anything outside of practice is going to be governed. And at that time, it's going to come into who you can play. So we're going to jump real quick to game limitations. I don't know that anybody's going to get 24 games and 3 tournaments in, but that has not changed. That's in section 190. On a normal year, that would be the case. It's up to local control, whether you trade off your tournaments for your games 2-to-1, 2 games for every 1 tournament. Again, it's going to be a shortened season. Don't know that anybody's going to hit 24 and 3. We do not have a games per week restriction. If you're used to the public schools here in Texas, you know that they can play 1 during the week, and then 1, the next game has to be after school on Friday. So we do not have that. Schools can play 2 or 3 games a week, depending on what their local administration allows. And then playoff games, several questions came in earlier. Are we going to still allow a warm-up game per round? And we will. So if you're lucky enough to make the playoffs and your team does well, unless we have to truncate and go real quick, real fast, you'll be allowed that warm-up game. Another thing that comes into play is who can we play? So section 138 still remains in place. So school-based programs, so if you're playing another high school, totally good to go. Homeschool programs that are recognized and homeschool programs that are members of a good of an affiliated league, they're going to be eligible. TCAF and TAIO, those kind of leagues are good to go. Up here in the North Central Texas area, you've got THES and some of the homeschool programs that were good. What you're not allowed to play and call it a game are club teams. independent teams. Those are schools that are not a part or a member of another organization, or schools that are members of a non-approved league. So a new league that forms in Texas, they have to wait 2 years before those teams become eligible. And there are a couple of leagues that are not eligible for participation. If you have any questions on that, drop us an email, info@taps.biz, and we'll try to walk you back through and help you understand if we can. Steve, talk about the official ball of TAPS.
Yeah, and remember, with eligible opponents, it's your responsibility to find out if they're an eligible opponent or not. So you can't say, well, they just told me. So be sure of that, follow up. And also, as we move on to the official ball of TAPS, the Wilson ball, tricolor, is the required ball every time that you play an interscholastic competition this year. So not just for playoffs, not just for district, but for pre-district all the way through. Make sure you have that. Also, you can find all the game balls that are approved by TAPS. If you go on the TAPS website, click athletics, and you go down to the little green box that says approved balls. And then at the very bottom, you can see a link that goes to all the Wilson dealers that we have in Texas. So again, if you want more information, go to the website, athletics, TAPS approved balls. And if you want to find the dealerships that we have, go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of that page, and we have a link for you there as well. And our partner, our preferred, not just preferred, but our required ball of TAPS is Wilson, and we have a word from them. All right. And also, as a reminder, and this is really reminders for Will in our office, is we need that game information. We need your schedules turned in, put into Rank 1, and also Score Stream. If you have any questions on how to do that, please let us know. Will in our office is the one that's going to be following up with that phone call or that email. But again, we need that information input, and we need to know what your schedules are in advance so we'll be able to move forward. Okay. And Robert, I think we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Let's jump in here and grab a couple of these questions. One of them is, can we play TCAL? The answer to that is no.
They're a non-approved league.
They are not approved. Another one is a question about who you're playing in district. You are assigned to a district based on your classification.
So if you go to www.taps.biz, jump up there and click on the word standings. And if you'll scroll down, you'll also see where it says Alignment 2020. Click on Alignment 2020 and then search for your sport, volleyball, of course, since that's where we are. And it'll show you who's in your district. So if you haven't had your preseason meetings, it's a great time to start having those pre-district meetings. Robert?
Another question about volleyballs. The Wilson I-Core, is that ball allowed?
Wilson I-Core is still allowed. It's getting a little old out there. We've been at the K1. This is year 2 of going to the K1. So I-Core is still allowed if you have them, but just remember it does have to be a Wilson leather ball, and we appreciate that help.
Question about how many games do we need in a season?
We're going to talk about that later. Great question there. We will talk about COVID and what's going to be required during games here as we move on through the session. So good thinking out there. Thank you for catching us up. And we'll move on to the next slide.
Yes, we're moving on to officials. Make sure, again, as we turn in our schedules, that you find your chapter and you turn in your schedule to the chapter. All TAPS approved chapters are all that is allowed. That is TASO or specifically TAPS approved, which you can find by going to the resource guide on the website and going down to officials, and you can find the approved chapters. Be aware that they need to be from a chapter. They can't be just TASO trained. They need to be TASO trained members and assigned by TASO under the umbrella of TASO or of the TAPS approved chapters. So be careful with who you have. If you have a question, please contact us here in the office. We'll be glad to help you with that and to find out who's available in your area. But again, get those schedules in as quick as you can if you have not already. And also, when you make a change with their schedules as well. So you don't want to have a match and no official showing up. Site-based officials. Site-based officials, as we have, and we used to have this in our old district, is they should not be high school or younger students who will be your site-based officials, your official book, your libero tracker, clock operator, lines officials, if not from a chapter, again, are your responsibility. And we're going to be talking about some of the COVID precautions and protocols we're going to be taking with these various people, but make sure that you have these people in line. They are trained to do the job they need to do, and they also need to be trained in the protocols that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. At this point, let me go ahead and hand it over to Robert.
All right, thank you, Steve. We'll jump in here to the NFHS rules. Our volleyball is played under the NFHS rules for volleyball. You can find those. You can go to the NFHS website. You can go to nfhs.org. That's nfhs.org. Click on that volleyball page, and that will take you to a resource where you can print, you can download, you can order a copy of the rule book for volleyball to have sent to you. What we suggest and what we use here in the office very often is we have them on our phone. There's an app you can purchase. It's real cheap. It's only $6 or $7 for each rule book. We suggest that you have that resource available to you. It's great if you have it on your phone, so you have it with you every time you're home or away. So that's a great resource, and that's the rules that we refer to with regard to the play of the game. Also, next slide, with regard to uniform rules and regulations, those are contained in that rule book as well. And then the NFHS rule changes for volleyball for this year. There aren't very many, but those are there on that same resource. If you click on that volleyball page, scroll down, it says rule changes for this year. There are some changes with regard to the delay of the contest for submitting your roster late. That's now a yellow card instead of a rally or a point or penalty. Their yellow card is described for unsporting conduct on the bench, and that applies to the team and the coaching staff, anybody in the bench area. And then there's some points of emphasis for bench behaviors and sportsmanship and management of the non-team personnel and officials communication. There aren't a lot of changes this year, but they are enumerated there. And so use that as a resource to know the rules for volleyball that apply through the NFHS. Next, we're going to move on to eligibility. We're going to talk about eligibility for staff and students, and we're going to pass it off to Steve.
Well, I'm going to pass it to Brian real quick for a couple of questions, and then we'll move forward.
So one of the questions that came through after we discussed this is, are we allowed to play independent schools? And the answer to that is no. Your opponent must be a member of an approved league or an approved home school, so to speak, one that meets all the requirements. A question came in, can varsity teams judge lines on a JV match? To be honest with you, our rules would say no. We prefer it to be someone not in high school. However, for the JV match, if that's all you have, that's all you have. But for your varsity match, save your adult. And then the last one that I will pick up real quick is, as I am looking at it, says, can libero trackers be a student manager? And the answer to that is no. Your table crew should all be out of high school at the varsity level. I think if you're going somewhere as a visiting team, you expect a certain level of experience at the table. So your table crew should be out of high school, should not be team managers. Your clock, et cetera, should not be team managers as well. Somebody that has that's an important duty, not only to keep up with the score, but on timeouts, et cetera. And one last, what if a school opts out and decides not to play? That's totally local control. So if your school chooses that they're not going to participate in any activity this year, they just won't include it on your TAPS contract for 2021. We'll move forward. We'll miss you, but we'll move forward and hope you can get back, and away we will go. Steve?
Well, moving on to eligibility, TAPS oversees the eligibility of all staff and students in terms of TAPS competition, which is all the time, year round, if it's interscholastic. And the way we do this is we use the Rank 1 system, which is the TAPS database. And so all inputs of information, student profiles and staff go into Rank 1. And as we look to the staff, the first thing we need to do with our staff members is to make sure they all have all titles put into Rank 1. So fortunately or unfortunately, with private schools, you don't get to just be a coach of one sport. Many times you might be the assistant football coach, head basketball coach, assistant track, something like that. We need every single position filled in there. It's very important, whether they're varsity or sub-varsity. Create the coach's profile, fill in all the information, make sure that we have good contact information, your complete professional acknowledgement of rules, and to complete the scope. This will all get you to be eligible to be able to coach in TAPS. Moving on. Student profile. And this is something that's unique that we have not done with Tapster, is we put this on the families to have a rank 1 account. They fill out their student profile with acknowledgement of rules and everything else, medical history, the physicals. And remember, physicals are required this year. Unlike the UIL, we're not waiving that, but if you're having problems getting in to see a doctor, we're giving a little bit of grace so you can put in the most recent physical until the time that you can get in to see a doctor. But again, that's very important. All school-based forms required by your school need to be put into this. It also gives us a safety net to make sure, especially as athletic directors and registrars, if you fill out the student profile correctly, it'll bring it up and make you sure that you do not living with parent or transfer student and everything else. So make sure this is done and updated for returning students, and new students need to create a form. New to school, all 9th graders, all transfer students, they need to create the account and fill out the student profile and just follow the flow chart. It'll take you where you need to go. It'll answer the questions and it'll present the forms that you need to fill out, and do so carefully. And if you have any questions, again, contact the office. We're here to help.
All right, thanks, Steve. Jump into student rosters. It's very important that you create your student roster. Once you've created your team, then you'll go in this case to volleyball. You'll go to volleyball. You'll set up your roster. You'll build your roster. If you need help with that, you can reach out to our office or to Rank 1. Kelly or Rhonda in our office can help walk you through that process. All of your students participating in volleyball need to be on that roster. That is basically what we used to call our eligibility roster. And as you build that roster, you'll see as you pull your students from your school database over into this roster for volleyball, they may appear red, they may appear green. If they're red, that means they have forms that have not been completed yet and they are not yet eligible to participate. If they're green, that means all that's been done and they're good to go. Last year was our first year of Rank 1. We allowed a lot of grace and mercy throughout the year in people understanding the system, getting people in correctly, making sure all the forms were done. Going forward this year, everybody should be good to go, and you need to make sure that all those volleyball players that are on that roster are green before they participate in any contest. I think we've got, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We can help you with that. I think we've got a couple of questions we're going to try to pick up here.
We're going to go to mandatory practice can happen for fall sports once we begin school. That is correct. Once your first day of school occurs, whether virtual or brick and mortar, you can make those practices mandatory, and they're maxed out at 3 hours a day for contact. So if you have an open weight room in the morning, you can, and it's an hour, and you have 2 hours a day in the afternoon, that's your 3 hours. Once you actually get to September 7th, Robert, I think that once you get to September 7th, then the length of the day and length of your contact hours for in-season sports is up to local control. Is that correct?
That is correct. TAPS does not have any limitations on practice once you are in season.
Another question came out. The rule applies about playing schools that have junior high kids on their high school teams. So if it's a homeschool team, they don't need to be playing their over 19. They don't need to be able to be playing their 5th year seniors, and they don't need to be playing their junior highs. So you need to ask that question if you have a homeschool opponent. Same thing would apply to other schools. Most schools are to a situation, if they're a member of an approved league, such as TCAF, Texas Christian Athletic Fellowship, then if they were to play junior highs as allowed by their rules, then you could play them. Other rosters may have different opportunities. So home schools have to be meet the same requirements as TAPS. For you to play, you need to make that request, and the home school cannot be a part of a organization that is not recognized by TAPS. There's a question about the date for rosters. So again, we want your rosters in Tapster. I'm sorry, not in Tapster, in Rank 1. Shows my age here, 13 years of the other. We want your rosters in Rank 1 by your first game, and you can amend those rosters up or down as you go. But you're basically certifying that those opportunities are there for the young men and young women, especially in volleyball, the women that are eligible to play. Can you have tryouts? You can have tryouts at any point. We're not going to govern when you can and cannot have tryouts. So You can have tryouts whenever and be ready to rock and roll once your season begins. So I think that kind of takes us to using rank 1. If you've got any questions on rank 1, once you get the kids, once you get everything else ready to go, if you have struggles, give Kelly and Rhonda a call here in the office, 254-947-9268, 254-947-9268, or reach out to us at info@taps.biz. We'll walk through that. Robert, the section 138 is going to cover eligible opponents, I do believe. So if they need to go back and look at that opportunity, they can go to taps.biz, hover over the resources, drop down to the bylaws, let it load for a couple of minutes and go all the way down to section 138. It's the longest section in TAPS, but 138 schedules and opponents will tell you who you can play and when you can play them. If you have any questions after that, please reach out to us. Steve, throw it back over your way.
All right, we're about to move into our official online ticketing provider, which is Hometown Ticketing. And then this year with COVID, it might be just on time. We'll be using this for all the TAPS hosted events and championships, but also consider using them at your school. And it's a lot of good, it's a good service and good folks. And again, Hometown Ticketing.
Hello, everyone. Blake Lance and Caitlin McCann here from Hometown Ticketing. Since January 1st of this year, Hometown Ticketing has successfully partnered with over 2,500 high schools, numerous high school conferences, 20-plus collegiate conferences, and numerous state associations. We are the official digital ticketing partner of TAPS and would love to show you our product and just why TAPS and all of our other partners have decided to join the Hometown family.
Hometown Ticketing is continuing to raise the bar with features to help schools make event ticketing convenient for fans, tools to assist with gate and venue management, and touchless scanning for paper and mobile tickets. We are currently working with schools on capacity management. This gives you the ability to allow access to certain groups like parents and students so they can purchase tickets before the events go live. Through the Hometown Ticketing platform, your event staff will never have to touch a fan's phone again to check into events. We offer a no-touch scanning option that is quick and easy for your gate workers. Any smartphone or tablet can be turned into a scanner that can give you immediate notifications for duplicate or invalid tickets. Hometown Ticketing offers digital ticketing passes and hard passes for season tickets, all sports passes, or any other type of pass your school offers. Passes are customized with your school's logo and colors. Through our program, these passes are available to your athletic department at no cost. Hometown Ticketing is the only school-specific online ticketing company that was designed to never touch school funds. When a fan purchases a ticket online, the funds are available immediately to your school. No more waiting for checks or payments from your ticketing provider. We offer quick and easy reporting options that can give your event staff real-time amounts for tickets sold and tickets scanned in. We are excited to get to work with TAPS and its member schools. Please feel free to take a screenshot of our contact information and reach out to us for a demo or more information. We look forward to hearing from you and thank you for your time.
Before we jump to our next section, we're going to try to keep up with these questions as good as we can. Some of our webinars, we get only a handful. We had one webinar where we got a couple of hundred questions. So obviously, in that instance, we can't get to all of them. We will certainly try. Here's a question. Is there a deadline if a student fails their physical? Yes, there is. You're required to have a physical be cleared by a physician before you can participate. So that student would not be allowed to participate under TAPS rules until they get a physical where they've been cleared by a physician. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, reach out to us.
So to that point, Robert, if a young lady is not cleared at the beginning of the year, but she finally gets cleared before the playoffs, is she going to be eligible to play in the playoffs?
If she's otherwise eligible and everything else is in order under our rules and everything's in rank 1 like it should be, then yes, as soon as she's cleared, she would be eligible to participate.
That would any other return to play as well. If there was a major injury, hope there's not one, but there's a major injury or concussion, which requires a return to play protocol, they might not be able to play for an extended period of time. But then if you made the championships again, Robert, that individual would be eligible to play as long as cleared by the doctor in question, correct?
They would be, that is correct. And while we're on physicals, let me address this one because we get this question at least several times a day. We are still requiring an updated physical for this school year. And we've had that question a lot. If by chance a student can't get one, and we understand there may be some issues getting into a physician and getting that done, then go ahead and use the latest, the most recent physical you have, upload that into rank 1 for the time being so that they're in there, so there's something in the system, and they would be approved to go temporarily. But the second part of this, we are asking that that physical be completed as soon as possible.
I think in the year of COVID-19, as we get forward, physicals are extremely important. It protects the student, it protects the coach, it protects the school, it protects the ATC, the trainer on staff. So you want to get them as soon as you can. We do understand that there might be those that have difficulty getting in. If a student is returning from a major injury or a series of concussions, highly encourage that last year's physical would not be enough on that situation. As the athletic director or as the coach, I definitely want to make sure young lady was ready and capable of playing without injury to herself. Robert?
All right, next topic will be communication. Brian?
We're just going to jump through quickly the channels of communication. So if you go to www.taps.biz, if you click on athletics and then click on volleyball, it'll take you to the volleyball landing page, the volleyball blog on that page. So that blog is the emails we sent out to the volleyball coaches or any pertinent information or changes. So www.taps.biz. Click on athletics, click on volleyball, go to that landing page. You'll have the latest tweet. You'll have the latest posts that we've done, which is generally an email out to the coaches. Our emails, we're only going to send emails to the account shown in rank 1. So again, it goes back to what we said earlier. Please go back and make sure your rank 1 account is active and you are ready to rock and roll for the current year. We can also send push notifications, which kind of probably annoyed some folks last year, where it says, hey, go to rank 1, you have a message. So that's what that means. Go to your log in and go to your home page on rank 1, it'll get you there. And then we do have social media at TAPS Volleyball. So as things go good for you this year, please include us at TAPS Volleyball. We want to follow along with you as we go forward, and that's where we'll be posting information, especially once we get to the brackets and the playoffs, et cetera. So TAPS social media and media. Again, the TAPS website is our way of getting there, the homepage. Also, if you go to taps.biz, hover over resources, drop down to the bylaws. That's where you'll get to the bylaws. It does take a while to load, but it will also get you the important information you're going to need as you go forward. The volleyball page can't express enough. It's good that you're getting emails from us, but highly encourage you to go to that volleyball page, look and see if there's any updates. If you find discrepancies, please let us know. We've got a couple of really good folks out there that if we make an error, quick to let us know, and we're glad for that. We don't want to have incorrect information out there, so we really do appreciate that when the opportunity comes. So the volleyball page is important. The website's important. Make sure you have your information in rank 1. Can't encourage you enough to have that part ready to rock and roll.
All right, thanks, Brian. We're going to shift gears and jump into health and safety protocols. So we're going to talk a little bit about some general protocols, some of the things that we released last Friday that are out there on our website that apply to just in general activities conducted at your school. And then we'll jump into volleyball specific protocols that I know you're all interested in. We're going to get to those in just a second. That'll be pretty much the remainder of our webinar. But before we jump into health and safety, we've got a new sponsor, Steve.
Yeah, it's Reveal Medical, and they're also Reveal Suits. They have partnered with TAPS and with Rank 1 Health to provide PPE and at very good prices and availability. And so we're very excited to try to help folks who have a line item in their budget that didn't exist last year. And so hopefully these folks can help you. And the CEO, Carlton Dixon, if you're a fan of University of Texas basketball, you'll recognize his name, has a message for us.
Hello, my name is Carlton Dixon. I'm the proud founder and CEO of Reveal Medical Incorporated. We're definitely very excited to be partners with TAPS, prestigious schools, well-known schools, awesome institutions, and we're just proud to be affiliated, proud to be a resource of PPE for their students, their staff, parents even. We definitely are excited about aligning ourselves with such a great organization as TAPS. Very familiar with them, growing up in the Dallas area, familiar with a lot of the TAPS schools and being a former athlete and coach. Just very well aware of its reputation. That makes it, all the more worthwhile to be affiliated. We are excited about our offerings of PPE, including but not limited to disposable face masks, KN95 masks, hand sanitizer, gloves, face shields, you name it. If it's in the PPE industry, we are able to supply and provide it. We've been fortunate to provide PPE packages and kit to some of our collegiate partners as well, the Naval Academy and entire Conference USA, which is a partner of ours as well. So we definitely envision providing the same level of service and the same level of product to our TAPS institution. We are able to provide kits customized to how the institutions need particular items. We can package masks and gloves and sanitizer, or we can package gloves, face shields, and thermometers. Very customizable going through us. We also have the ability, and this is kind of a byproduct of what the Reveal brand is about, our ability to customize with officially licensed logos. We do that in our collegiate and professional athletics world on our suit side, and we're able to do that on our PPE side as well. If that was ever a request or a desire for any institution, we can most certainly provide. Please go visit our website, Reveal Medical Inc. That is revealmedicalinc.com. or any of our social media pages at Reveal Medical, and of course at Reveal Suits as well, which is also part of the Reveal brand. And we are, again, just excited to be a part of the TAPS family, and we look forward to working with their awesome institutions.
Very appreciative of Reveal Medical and Carlton's group of coming in to help us. We're also working on a page on the website to have links to all sorts of companies that are offering COVID-related items, whether it's PPE or sanitizer or things like that. So if we can help you along as you move forward with something that you're really not used to ordering or having to deal with, we're going to try to make that available on the website. Robert has a couple of questions he wants to answer next.
All right, thanks, Steve. We've got one here related to physicals. We were just talking about that. It says, do we need to upload our physical into Rank 1, even if it's in our school database? And the answer to that is yes. We need that in Rank 1. Just as a reminder, we've covered this many times last year and throughout the summer. We do not have access to that medical information. That is private, protected information. Rank 1 is one of the best companies out there at being HIPAA and FERPA compliant and understanding all those rules and how that works. But it needs to be uploaded into Rank 1 so that that placeholder is checked off in their system and that we know that that has been completed. Brian, I'll pass it to you.
Probably what everybody's been waiting for so far has been the COVID programs and how we're going to operate and where we're going to go forward. To be honest with you, we've been working on this since March the 18th. We've delved into many different levels and layers of NCAA, NAIA, NJCAA. We've looked at 51 other organizations, the plans, and some folks have started. Some folks did a couple things over the summer that are school-based. Again, interscholastic competition is different than club. It's different than college. It's different than a lot of other opportunities and practice and skills drills, et cetera. So as we walk you through, this is going to be school-to-school communication. So the first thing we're going to talk about is required for all contests that's hosted by a TAPS member school. So that would be individual games, that would be tournaments, that would be scrimmages. So scrimmages, games, and tournaments are all covered by the same opportunity here as we go forward. So varsity and sub-varsity contest, the teams will affirm that all participants are symptom-free on the morning of the contest. All participants are in compliance with COVID contact guidelines, and this includes anybody that will be calling the lines for your school. So we're going to get to exactly what that means. Robert's going to give you a breakdown of what those guidelines are. But our plan is that on the morning of a contest or a tournament, the two teams involved will be sending an email to each other saying that anybody we bring, participant includes managers, trainers, bookkeepers, it includes the coaches, and it includes the players. So it'll be a little bit different in the past. So the home team will also have to affirm that anyone at the table crew are symptom-free the morning of the contest and that they're in compliance with the COVID guidelines. So home team has one more step because they have site-based officials, the Libero tracker, the official score, and the clock or scoreboard. They will all also affirm that they are COVID symptom-free. And then the officials, each of you should be talking with your chapter after our talks with TASO. Their thought was that you would affirm to the assigner. If you're the home team and you're hosting the games, you will just send a quick email to the assigner saying that both you and your opponent have affirmed that everyone is COVID free. To the best of our knowledge, the best of our ability. I don't know that there are any real answers out there at this point. But to the best of our knowledge, you will said that you were doing a self-test and you're symptom-free.
All right, thank you, Brian. What is it that I'm affirming? Well, what you're affirming is what we call self-screening conditions, and we explain those here. This is in the information we released last Friday, but we're going to reiterate it here because it will apply to all activities, and specifically for ADs hosting games and volleyball coaches hosting games or attending games. You must, all the schools, everybody involved, just like Brian mentioned, your staff, coaches, players, anybody involved in the essential operation of the game, they are required to self-screen for COVID-19 symptoms before participating in TAPS activities or before entering the areas where the TAPS activities are being conducted. And that affirmation will include, at a minimum, a positive affirmation that they do not have COVID symptoms, they're not lab confirmed with COVID-19, nor have they had close contact with any individual who is lab confirmed. So from that perspective, that is a minimum. Okay, we've had schools that have asked us about taking temperature checks. That's local control. If you choose to do that, you have the resources and the ability to do that. That certainly is permissible. It's not required by TAPS. Our minimum requirement is that all the teams, everybody involved with the teams associated with that game will, at a minimum, they will self-screen and they will affirm that they are in fact not experiencing any of those problems.
I think if you were to have a school that was going to test the fans and test the players when they arrive at game time, make sure that both athletic directors have covered that, both coaches have covered that prior to the contest. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I would hate to show up somewhere and not know what was coming when it got there. We do have a couple of questions. Robert, do we need to upload the actual physical into Rank 1 or just input the date of the physical?
You need to upload the actual physical. There's a place to do that. You upload that document just like other documents that are uploaded all the time. So yes, you do need to do that.
And then Steve, to clarify, they can have tryouts once school begins. Practice can become mandatory, just like it has all the time. So once school begins, even though between now and September 7th, if you've begun school, you can have tryouts at the present time. The only thing you're limited to is they shouldn't last for more than 3 hours a day, and you shouldn't have 15 contact hours a week. Is that correct?
That is correct. And again, summer hours until you start school. And the main difference between summer and school is voluntary in the summer.
So once you've started school, everything comes back into the mandatory realm. And then once you hit September 7th, it'll just be like August 3rd in the old days. Once you started, you're ready to rock and roll and you can go forward from there. For those who've been around a while, August 3rd being that first Monday. So moving forward, Robert.
All right. Health and safety protocols, COVID-19 changes specific to volleyball. And then how does it impact my program? So we're going to spend the rest of the time here visiting about specific COVID protocols that will be in place relative to volleyball. Steve, talk about practices.
And I'm not going to say a lot about practices because that's left to local control. So we expect you to be keeping with your local, state, and national government, your campus, and the decisions that you're going to have. So again, practice time and protocols, that stays at the school level. Contest. Rules apply to all contests hosted by TAPS member schools. That's all scrimmages, games, tournaments. Again, you must follow the bare minimum that we're going to lay out. Again, this is a bare minimum. If you go to a non-TAPS school and you're playing a game, they're the ones that are hosting. And so again, you're going to have to abide by some of those rules. But again, we need communication before the fact, be ready, preparation, communication, moving forward.
So Steve, just to clarify, we're talking about high school contest. TAPS, of course, is a high school organization, so we do not govern what you do at the junior high level. However, I think we would highly encourage that if you have a high school that you would follow similar opportunities for your junior high as well. Robert, there were a couple of quick questions that I saw that I think we could get to real quick. If a student is symptom-free before school, do they have to do another check before the match?
That is not required, assuming those symptoms stayed the same. However, our expectation would be, as in any instance, if that symptomology changed during the course of the day, then we would expect that that student, that coach, the school involved would remove that student from that situation.
I think using the similar situation, if the person just has a sore throat or has sniffles or is nauseous or whatever, that doesn't necessarily preclude them from playing, does it, Robert, if they answer yes to that question?
that would be something that they would need to address before they enter that game or that contest or go to that other situation.
So let me state it in a different way. You need to apply the same rules to extracurricular participation as you do to curricular participation. So I am sure that most schools that have a return to school plan have some form of self-affirmation, or they have some form of testing. So you would need to apply the same rules for the extracurricular as you would do for the curricular. So in this instance, if a young person showed up, or a coach or whatever, and said, hey, I have a sore throat, then you would need to apply the same protocol and rules as to whether you would let them go to class in the same manner as whether you would let them play that afternoon. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the document that we produced on Friday has the entire list of symptomology that you're affirming in this particular instance.
All right, let's move on forward.
Okay, contest. What we're going to talk about now is how is this going to affect my contest, my pre-match, pre-game, warm-up protocols, and then also my game protocols, the playing area, the warm-up procedures, balls, court time, my pre-game meeting with officials, my lineup, the introductions, all those things relative to an actual volleyball match. What are those protocols and how is that going to be handled? Brian?
So we're going to start with the playing area, and it looks like a big opportunity for the cleaning staff to get in go here. But what we're basically saying is local control in keeping with your school's protocols. Then the playing area should be cleaned or disinfected based on what you're doing on a normal nightly basis anyway to keep it clean. Bench area, we should have social distancing on the bench. We're at the present time saying, hey, take out one seat at a time. The students can stand. I don't know that a lot of our gyms are going to allow us 6 feet in between each player. You might be out the door and on the sidewalk in some of the gyms I've coached in if we were to do that. But the bench area, the seats should be cleaned and wiped down in between contests, again, following what you're doing on your school's protocols. And then the score table, we would hope you'd wipe it down in between matches, but that is going to be a requirement. Make sure that those chairs are as well. We want to keep everybody as safe as possible. And then moving into pregame, we're going to talk about the warm-ups. We're going to talk about the pregame meeting with officials, lineups, and introductions. So we'll walk on through that. So one of the big changes, or I say it is one of the changes that we have, is that as far as the clock goes, the warm-up times, when you're doing your six, the ball handling, both teams may be on the court. Then one needs to step off. We're going to go 6-5-5-2-2 instead of 6-5-5-2. We don't need interaction between the schools. Prior to the contest, the home team and the visiting team are going to agree that the home team will provide 2 separate sets of balls, one for each team to warm up with, and they will be sanitized. Or the visiting team can choose to bring their own warm-up balls. Again, the idea here across the United States and almost all 51 organizations is to prevent that contact in between the two. So we are going to have this printed out. We'll have a 1-page slick that'll go out later today. But warm-up times are changed just a little bit. During your ball handling, both teams can be on the court, and then we'll move forward as we go from there. The pregame meeting, TASO will instruct you, or your TAPS approved officials will instruct you when you get there. Basically, the bottom line here is 1 coach and 1 player from each team. You'll walk out on the court. Social distancing is required, meaning no closer than 6 feet. We've heard that for a while now. And then we highly encourage masks unless you're one of those that's compromised and should not be wearing a mask. So the officials will help you with the pregame meeting, and then we'll go forward from there. So the lineups, instead of handing your lineup, you'll place your lineup 10 minutes prior to the contest. That rule hadn't changed. It's still 10 minutes. And as Robert indicated earlier, rather than being a point penalty for not being there, the coach will be assessed a yellow card. So be careful. As volleyball coaches, as you know, you're fortunate you get 1 more card than soccer. So you go yellow, red, then yellow, red. So you're going to start with one hit against you if you go that route. Lineup should be placed, and one of the things that TASO and I think the officials across the country are really emphasizing, that anybody that touches the lineup cards, whether it be a coach or official or your table crew, should have a glove on when you're handling it. Again, trying to reduce the contact as we go forward in that area. Player introductions, the fist bump and the handshake with the officials and the opposing coach is out. COVID has taken that part away. So we're going to recommend that players, once introduced, once you're doing your introduction for both teams, they go to the end line They'll be on the end line for the prayer and national anthem. Unfortunately, choir and chorus are one of the options that has been highly discussed during COVID. So live singing is discouraged due to the aerosol spray that seems to occur when you sing. So again, that's the way we're working there. And player huddles are discouraged. One of the things that while the girls are together with the coaches and huddles, I say discouraged. Being tight in the tight formation and everybody leaning in and hugging on each other, it's a bad physical display where everybody's watching. So we want to encourage you to have a little bit of distance in between you when you're doing your huddles, and that's both in between points and on the sidelines. So again, we'll move to the end line after being announced, and then no handshakes, fist bumps with the officials or the opposing team.
Moving on to the contest or the match. There's a few changes that we have to go over at this time that will help us in terms of mitigating risk. Number one, teams will not switch benches. Visiting team chooses a bench. We also ask the teams limit number of participants to 15. That's players, coaches, managers, statistician, everybody to 15. The chairs should be spaced to allow as much social distancing as possible. Like Brian said, in some of these gyms, you might end up in the parking lot if it's 6 foot, but please get as much distance as you can. And if you're not actively engaged in the match, you need to be wearing a mask, and coaches are encouraged to wear a mask as well. Teams will not switch sides of the court. And I know this is a change, but again, this is one of the things that we can do to mitigate risk a little bit. And also keeping the ball sanitized or sanitized as we can. A 3-ball rotation should be used. 3 balls may be rotated at the score table, or you can use the ball handlers. We did this at West for the state Final Four. The local officials came and we were able to rotate balls in and out, and we were wiping them down, but you can create something. We also have a handout, if you notice, a PDF there that says 3-ball instructions PDF, and you can use that also for the instructions. And substitutes should be made at the serve line, not at the net. So we're not bringing everybody together in one spot. We're spreading it out a little bit. And again, the substitution steps up to the service line.
On that question, make sure you're in agreement with the TASO R2. Whoever's down there is the R2. If they tell you to go somewhere else, the R2 is in charge. So always listen to the person in the white or the striped shirt as they govern the contest. So, but that's basically where we're going to be headed. I think that picks up a question earlier. So you should have 3 Wilson balls. They're ready to be sanitized. We will have additional information out later this week on sanitizing options. It is a leather ball, so you want to be careful about using alcohol-based cleaners. Robert, do we have questions we need to get to, or do we want to move forward? How are we sitting right there?
Let's move forward. Some of these questions I see are going to be answered by the next few slides we're going through.
Okay.
So let's jump on that first, and then we'll try to pick them up.
Okay.
We said coming together after the point is discouraged, again, the look, but also we're mitigating risk wherever we can. After a few bad basketball seasons of the flu, we never put our hands together anymore as we broke, and it became part of what we were doing. So if we can just be aware of that, and again, let's take the opportunity to be as safe as we can when we can. And again, that's local control, but we certainly urge you to keep the distance where you can.
So when we have these situations, we've made it very clear, and TASO and our TAPS approved chapters have made it very clear to us. It is not the job of the R1, R2 to make sure that COVID precautions are in place. That is up to each team and to the local game administrator. As a reminder, you're required for all high school contests, sub-varsity and varsity, to have a game administrator on hand. So any situations that would arise, Robert, I think it would be wise that they handle it or be proactive. Again, it's local control, whether you come together after a point. That's not something that's going to cost you a point. It's not something that's going to cost you a game. But the optics, and I hate that word, but it's kind of true in this situation, the optics of everybody looking in, especially in a time while we're trying to social distance, especially in this little huddle on the right-hand side, I think would come into question.
All right, thank you, Brian. Let's move on to personal protective equipment. This will address, I think, several of the questions we've been getting as we started this particular segment. If we look at face coverings for contest personnel, what is required? If you are a manager, scorebook on the bench, if you're an athletic trainer, if you're a player on the bench, if you're a player before or after the game, coming into the facility, leaving the facility, getting prepared for the warm-up and the participation and the table crew, all those people are required to have face coverings. This is with regard, remember, to contest personnel. Recommended, and this is subject to local control. Coaches, we're recommending that you wear a mask, okay? It's not required. Players, you can if you choose to, okay, but you're not required to while you're participating. Those are in the guidelines that, once again, that we published on Friday, and that is consistent with the latest governor's order. So that's why we have that rule at this time. And you'll hear us say at this time many times throughout the coming weeks, because we will continually monitor things and change if things are required. Officials, R1, R2 in lines, it is recommended in our discussions with the officials. I think many of them will be doing that, but that'll be up to them. Next slide, gloves, with regard once again to contest personnel. Fans and things are separate. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But with regard to contest personnel, gloves required, athletic trainers and table crew. As we mentioned earlier, table crew, you're going to be touching things. They're going to be passed back and forth or handled by the officials. So that's something that we're requiring. Trainers, obviously, they're used to that. That's their world all day, every day anyway. It is permissible for coaches to wear gloves, managers, anybody else. The players certainly in warm-up, they can do, if they're handling balls and things, they can certainly do that. Gloves are not allowed during the contest and during participation by rule. And then the same is true for officials. They certainly can if they want to, but they're not required to. Uniform allowances.
I think we'll just skip on down one more. Long sleeves have become kind of the norm in volleyball. Long pants, warm-up pants are allowed if at the local discretion of the coach. Not all have to wear it. One could, one couldn't. Undergarments must be of a single color, and they should be the color of the dominant color of the uniform top. So the National Federation did give us a little leeway there, and I think if you want to use it, it's there for you to use. Steve, tell us about the game balls.
Again, the game balls will be Wilson balls. We ask you to use the 3-ball rotation again. You can do the scorer's table or the ball handlers. The lines people can help as well. Sanitize the balls when they're removed from play. And again, we'll share some of that on the website of what we found to be true. Wilson sent us some things, but we had some other places that we found sanitizing products. And change balls as pace allows. So if it goes out, spectators pick it up, set breaks, timeouts, every chance you get. Let's try to stay on top of that and keep our protocols moving.
Along that same line, one of the questions that came up in earlier conversation, and it's kind of become in vogue that you have students from your school go out and shag balls for them during warm-ups. That's not going to be allowed. Only team personnel need to be involved in the pregame warm-up, et cetera. If you're doing the 3-ball rotation, those 3 ball girls or ball boys have some pretty specific duties as far as touching the ball and taking care. But again, I think it's going to be a situation where we're going to play it by ear. But right now, we're going to tighten things down. So if we get started, and when we get started, we'll be a little more positive there. I apologize. When we get started, we'll be able to move through to conclusion. Sorry about that, Steve. Go ahead.
No, and we continue with what we've been telling you everywhere. Sanitize your hands whenever you can. You come to the bench, substitution, timeout, set change, have some the product there for people to be able to sanitize and just stay on. Again, mitigating the risk every opportunity that we get as we move through the game.
All right, thank you, Steve. We'll jump to the table crew, and remember, these are our site-based officials. They are officials. They are a part of the official crew for the game. If you're the home team, obviously you're providing those people. So, table crew, remember, they should be in that group of people that self-screen, just like everyone else who's participating in the contest. That's clock or scoreboard, depending on what you might have. The official book and the libero tracker. Those are the only ones that should be at that officials table. Okay, those are the only ones that should be there. I know in some instances you have a big long table and the visiting scorekeeper, statistician wants to sit there as well. For this year, we're going to say that table crew in volleyball needs to be limited to those people. No other personnel allowed at the table. The visitor bookkeeper needs to sit on their bench. The announcer, if different from the clock or scoreboard, you may not have an announcer depending on the circumstances. Those people need to be separate from the table crew, because those are going to be the ones interacting with the coaches and the officials on an ongoing basis. Everybody else in the equation needs to be social distance or in their respective areas as much as possible.
So we obviously realized if you only have an 8 or 10 foot table, you can't get 6 foot in between you, but you do need social distance as much as possible. And going back to the rule about who can sit at table, who not, That's TASO, that's National Federation of High Schools, that's the National Officials Organization. They're really wanting to limit the number of people that are over there. So again, TAPS it's not an original thought, but it is one we're going to push forward.
All right, thank you, Brian. Let's jump on to the line officials. These are once again site-based officials. And some of you may have in the past, you may have paid to have line officials come and handle your games. That's great if you can. It's a little extra expense if you can do that. Officials this year may be a little tight in terms of numbers. So you may have been used to getting that in the past. They may or may not be able to supply that for you this year. With numbers maybe down just a little bit. Make sure you communicate with your officials chapter and know what the expectation is. And then if you've been used to doing that and you have to provide them yourself, make sure those people are trained, they know what they're doing, they know the flow of the game, and they're people who can handle that well. They need to self-screen, they need to use their hands, or they need to have their own flags. This is something maybe you haven't had to do in the past. Officials bring those flags many times, but you might want to consider having a set of those at your school, so that your people handling them, you can sanitize them. If you change between judges between matches, you can sanitize those. Those are people certainly that mask and gloves would be very much appropriate for, given the role that they're playing in the situation. Post-match, let's talk about what happens after the match. Player personnel should not cross their side of the court. Players and coaches should wear face masks and practice social distancing as you end the match and as you get ready to leave your bench area and leave the particular facility. No post-game physical interaction between the teams. I know that it's traditional in a lot of our sports to shake hands and congratulate each other. This is just a year we're going to have to step away from that, at least for now, and not have that as a part of the equations. And teams obviously should observe social distancing when leaving the bench, leaving the playing area, taking all of their stuff with them, and then exiting the facility and doing that in a way that they social distance as best they can. Steve, talk about travel.
Again, travel is going to be left up to local control. How you get there, whether you're on a bus, whether you carpool, how many per seat. But again, we do urge you to take all the proper protocols as you move, as you travel, and also try to be sure that, again, mitigate the risk where possible. Fans, again, this needs to go up to local control, whatever the guidelines are in your area. But one thing that we are saying is TAPS, what's available for one team needs to be available for the other. And so again, it can't be, well, we can have 50 fans and they're all going to be our home fans and the visitors get none. We expect it to be even and fair, and that this needs to be talked out beforehand. This is also a big topic to be discussed during these district meetings, making sure that everybody is on the same page, understanding. And again, this is the time not only to talk, but to listen to each other as we work through these issues. Auxiliary groups. This is another thing, and again, needs to be talked about in advance. Going to decide whether the band, drumline, cheerleaders, dance groups, spirit groups, all of those need to make sure we know where they are, they're socially distanced, whether they're going to be allowed. They should not show up at the gym and be turned away because they said we're not allowing that. They need to know in advance that they cannot go or they can go and exactly where they're going to be. So make sure that this is done and it is talked about. It's important. I know sometimes we're just caught up in worrying about, well, we're just going to get the game, and if somebody comes, fine. This is a part that has to be addressed. Again, urging it with auxiliary groups.
All right, thank you, Steve. Once again, as a reminder, all of this information regarding fans, those protocols, auxiliary groups, that was all contained in the protocols we released last Friday. Let me remind you again where you can go find those. If you go to the TAPS website, on the home page, if you look to the right, there's a little tag that says TAPS in the news. That's where our recent posts are. Look for the recent posts. The most recent ones are scrolling that says TAPS 2020 Return to Action. Okay, look to that, click on that link. It will take you to a document that has the return to action protocols there. It's about an 18-page document. It has a lot of great information in it. If you haven't visited that yet, please do that. The information regarding fans is found on page 14. The information regarding auxiliary groups is found on page 15. If you read through that information, all those people, those auxiliary groups, fans, everyone, will be required everybody coming from the school, the auxiliary groups, will be making the same self-affirmation as those participating in the contest. And then the schools are required to post a sign at all of their entrances that everybody entering this facility is also affirming that they are not sick, they do not have those symptoms, nor have they been exposed to anyone. So there's some great general information there, not specific to volleyball, but all TAPS activities that will be helpful in this area.
I think another thing that the online ticketing does, and one thing that we'll be doing with hometown ticketing, is that by purchasing the ticket and then by using the ticket at the gate, and that would be true whether it's a wristband or a paper ticket as well, the fan is affirming that they are symptom free. So by entering the gym, you need to have a sign somewhere that says by entering the premises or whatever, you're self-affirming that you've gone through those things that Robert went through earlier. It's very important to keep our fans safe and et cetera. I know that somebody asked earlier about concession stands and bathrooms. Well, if you're going to have a game, you need to have a bathroom. We talked about it here in the office. We've played games with no electricity. We've played games with no air conditioning, but once the water goes out, you pretty well got to say we can't play anymore. So make sure that your fans are going to do the self-affirmation. Concession stands, totally up to the home team as to whether they do that or not, but your concessions need to be in keeping with your local orders. And Robert, Steve, I'm going to say this, and then y'all help me if I'm a little off base, but the reason we're going local control is there are just so many jurisdictional things that are out there. I know that we've heard from Department of Health and Human Services in different counties. We've had different county orders. We've had certain school districts choosing to do something, and our private schools are following right along with what the local school district does. As far as number of fans in the stands, some counties would say 25%, some would say 50, and some would say we're not going to check. I don't think that one's going to have a lot of people in it, but if you're in a county that doesn't have any COVID cases so far, there's 3 of them, then that might be a situation where you allow that. So I think we've pretty well got that. As we go forward, presently what we're looking at is playoffs, just like we have in the past. By district and area games would be at the home of the higher seed. So if you are that higher seed, then you need to make very certain that you're expressing what is allowed, what is not allowed, whether you're going to have locker rooms available, et cetera, when you get to playoffs, so that when we get there, you're a visitor. So it is going to be different this year. I know that what we're looking at for the locker room usage at the TAPS Championship will be different in the years past, but that's true of everyone. If we don't have a bubble, so we've got to do next best thing to the bubble, which is try to control this as best as we can. Neutral site for regional contest. We're not struggling, but we're finding it that we're having a lot of conversation with our potential TAPS host. Neutral sites may be a little harder to come by. 2 schools might be willing to have their own schools come, but they may not be willing to bring people from far away or other places. So neutral sites, you need to follow all the protocols, the affirmations, the cleaning rituals, et cetera. But you also need to throw in the protocols of the host facility. So if you get a host facility that has a very detailed list of what they're going to do, obviously if theirs is more restrictive or more encumbering than yours, then you will follow theirs. When we get to the playoffs, and I would say even at the district level, Steve mentioned the district executive committee, allowable number of fans, what is that? How is it equitable to both teams? Participating numbers allowed. So a lot of times when you get to the playoffs, you want to bring more than just your varsity. I think this is a good year for the junior varsity to sit in the stands or stay home. I don't know that we're going to have room on anybody's bench for 20 to 25 players like we may have had in the past. And I don't think the optics, again, that word I don't like, but it's there. Auxiliary groups in the playing arena. If you're at a neutral site, you definitely need to discuss whether you're going to allow the cheerleaders there. Locker room availability is a big talk across the United States right now. Most groups are saying no. Most groups are saying that locker rooms would not be available. I believe that if you were to use a locker room to have your team conversation, it's a smaller room. I think a classroom, if it's bigger, might be a better choice right now. A lot of, we're not saying it, we're not demanding it, we're not recommending it, but a lot of folks are going to say, come dressed as you are, ready to play, and then you leave the same way. So locker room for the bathroom, I think is fine. I think the others is different. And then game balls, who's supplying them and how you're going to go through, that would also be warm-up balls as well. Local personnel, we've been at West and Robinson, and we've been at University High. So you need to make sure that local host is also self-affirming to you and to the officials that their table crew or other groups will be ready to rock and roll. So that kind of takes us through the neutral sites and the home. And home, we'll answer a few questions here when we get done. Robert, go ahead and tell folks what we're going to be doing at our championships, if that helps at all as they move forward.
Okay, what you can expect if you have a great season, fortunate enough to get to the Final Four, we hope we see you there. Some of the considerations that we're looking at, and we'll have more information as we conclude the season and look toward the playoffs and the championships. Teams, players not on the court will wear a mask. Coaches are encouraged to wear a mask. Teams will remain on the same bench for the duration of the contest. Locker rooms, once again, if available, will be provided for team personnel meetings. Bathrooms will be available in some form or fashion, and showers not allowed at the facility. Those are the things that we believe will be in place based on the conversations we're having at this time. We will absolutely have relevant, good updated information to you as we get to those dates and have those venues selected and move into that world.
I think that also would provide the very basic information of what you should expect to do as a home team or at a neutral site, Robert.
Yes, absolutely. And then sideline, TAPS will not be providing any sideline water coolers. Everybody's well aware of the protocols that are out there for having your own water, making sure you're not sharing any items with any other players or any other personnel. The facility will have the ability to allow you to refill your containers. And then coolers with ice, what we call injury ice, many times are not going to be allowed in the playing or bench area. We will have an area maybe out in the hallway or just outside the door where you can have that and have access to it. But we're trying to, once again, limit those variables as much as we can. And then also at the championships, as always, we will be live streaming all the contests. This will be highly important this year if we're looking at limitations on capacity of fans at a particular facility, which is a likelihood as we sit here today. Limited attendance is a possibility. We are scheduling longer times between the contests. We're doing approximately 4-hour blocks as we look at it right now. We're going to need time to get the teams finished, get them out, get the area sanitized, the playing area, the benches, the fan area, the locker rooms, everything that's involved. We're looking at all the resources that it's going to take to accomplish that. It's going to take more time to accomplish that. So we're going to have a little bit of a protracted schedule, but it's going to be more predictable for the individual teams coming in because we're going to allow more time for that. And then pre and post game, we'll have protocols for our introductions, how we're going to handle that, and how we're going to handle awards afterwards.
And now that brings us to our next sponsor, which is Blue Frame Technologies and live streaming, which right on time, because I think live streaming will be more important this year than ever before, and the TAPS TV, which will be going on at the state level. And again, Blue Frame Technologies.
Mark Krug, I'm the Director of Partnerships at Blue Frame Technology. I think Blue Frame is special because it provides an end-to-end solution for video streaming, starting with our production truck software and all the way through our streaming platform and the way that we can deliver our clients' content to the modern platforms that people are using through web, mobile, and smart TV devices. Well, the Blue Frame and TAPS partnership is really special to us because we provide the whole streaming platform for TAPS TV, which is the official digital network of the TAPS organization. So not only is that the place where all of the state championships get profiled, but it's a great avenue for any member school of TAPS to be able to have a very prominent presence for their athletic and event broadcasts. We understand the high school space. We have valued our software and our streaming solution at a price point that really fits into the TAPS budget. So at just $1,000, you can stream all of your events for the entire academic year, not only to your website, but to the TAPS TV network. We greatly value our partnership with TAPS. We're looking forward to another great year and continuing to build on the TAPS TV momentum and success. And we invite any school that's looking for a change in their video streaming service to obviously give us a first look and become part of the TAPS TV platform.
Again, we thank Blue Frame Technologies, and they are offering some great deals to schools this year, very affordable to be able to live stream your events. And again, not everybody may be able to get there, but they can certainly experience it live along with everyone else. Brian, I'll hand it over to you.
We're going to speak briefly to if there is a stoppage of play. Our plan, of course, is to start on September 7th and roll all the way through the championships. We'll be definitely listening to local folks, our state governor, national levels. Right now, it looks like some of the metrics have come down. The number of cases and hospitalizations are seeming to stabilize. So hopefully we don't have a short-term stoppage, but we might, and we'll deal with that when we get there. A longer-term stoppage would be a little more difficult. And at that point, you know, you may, if you have a short-term stoppage of a week to 10 days, you may be able to play that 3 games a week and make up all the contests, or we may be able to do something a little different. However, the longer the stoppage, the less likelihood it's the less likelihood of making up games, the more it is of truncating a season. So at the present time, just to settle the situation, we're not looking at pushing volleyball back. We're not looking to have championships in December. We're not looking at playing volleyball in the spring. We're looking at it as a fall sport that'll begin on September 7th. And of course, we'll have updates as we go through that. What if a team cannot play? If it's a non-district opponent, then of course that would be a situation where you just wipe it off the schedule and go forward. Non-district does not count towards our district standings. If you cannot make it a district game, if you cannot make it up, again, you would drop that game off. There was concern earlier if we were unable to play a district opponent. Our rules do require that if you don't play that contest, and you may not be eligible for the postseason. Obviously, with being in the middle of a pandemic, that would be a situation where TAPS will assess, you know, if you had positive cases on your team or the other team had positive cases and you felt like you couldn't play, postseason would still be possible depending on how late in the season you get there. The question came up, what happens if a team cannot play a contest in the playoffs? Well, that situation, we have a deal where you can go back to the last playing date. So if it's a by-district opponent, you have until the area round. If it's an area round, you have until the regional round, but we can't push things too far back and we can't squish things too close together. So the fact of the matter is, at some point, a team may have to forfeit out of the playoffs based on COVID, and we all understand that that's a possibility. If you are at the regional level and the one of those cannot come, or one of the Final Fours cannot come, I think that what we would look at is go back to the previous round, and the team that lost to the one that can't come would have that invite. But those will be on a case-by-case situation. So we will definitely look at that as we come closer. If we are unable to bring a Final Four fourth contestant, we would have to look at an alternate format where the 3 teams each play each other. We would definitely work through that. We definitely have that opportunity. We have the space to do that. So Final Four, we're prepared with alternatives. We're prepared with options. I hope we don't have to use them. I hope we can just jump out and do what we normally do, and that COVID doesn't interrupt the season. Again, one of the strongest things I can say is there's 3 options here. One is a normal season. That's not going to happen. One is no season, and we're going to do everything we can to keep that from happening. And the other is a modified season, which may include some modified playing rules, some modified opportunities. I highly encourage those that have asked the questions and have the concerns that look at the opportunity that is there. We have the opportunity to go play. The rules may be a little different than what they were before, but I'd much rather have the opportunity to play than not have the opportunity to play. And that's what we're trying to provide at this time. So Steve, take it away.
Yeah, we're bringing volleyball back, and we're going to do it in some format. And again, we're going to need everybody working together and listening. And what we're going to do is we're going to be better than what we've seen from the world around us. And we're going to get this thing done, follow these protocols and procedures, plan in advance, and execute, and then move with the changes that are happening with this situation as we go. So again, we appreciate everybody's listening. We'll have this information available afterwards. Also, we have the protocols posted. And Robert, you have some contact information again to remind them.
Yeah, we'll grab as many questions as we can. We've gotten a lot here in the last few minutes, so we won't get to all of them, but we'll try to grab a handful that seem to be common questions. Can the ball handlers be high school kids?
Yes, highly encouraged. They bend over better than old people. Let them pick that ball up off the floor, wipe it off, clean it off, and be ready to go.
It says that teams should be limited to 15. Is that mandatory?
It's highly encouraged. And if you think about standing 6 foot apart, 15 people goes a long way down the hallway and out the side door. So we definitely want smaller benches. And I would highly encourage that if you skip every other seat, 15 chairs goes a long way. So again, not mandatory, but should be negotiated between the two schools. Highly encouraged.
Another question about the process for subbing in and liberos coming in. Once again, coordinate that with the officials.
The R2,
yes.
The R2, your down official is going to tell you exactly how they want it. And to be quite honest with you, after talking with Tasso, that may change a little bit with each person. If your R2 is 35 years old versus your R2 being 65 years old, may have a little bit of distancing different concerns there. The younger person may not mind it as much. The older person may say, hey, stay away. I definitely think that they're going to ask you to slow down. The farther away you are from the table, I don't think we're going to look for the quick substitutions that have become so prevalent, especially in club ball and recently in high school ball. I think they may slow you down, but if that R2 is ready to rock and roll and your libero tracker is as well, go at the pace they allow you to.
All right, here's another one about uniforms. Are long sleeves required on the jerseys?
Long sleeves are not required. It's just become a trend. So if it's local control, if you wish them, go for it. I know that was one of the concerns early was the more clothing you had, whether it be long sleeves or whether it be long pants, that you could limit some exposure. I'm definitely not saying do it. Every time I wore long pants or long sleeves and I hit the floor, I tore the elbow or the knee out. So I understand that is a possible thing. Obviously, no volleyball coach taught me how to bounce back up or roll. So
here's a question regarding just some general overall protocols. We addressed this a little bit in the information on Friday. What are the procedures if someone tests positive? We have that information in the protocols that were released on Friday.
So remember in the protocols, if you haven't read them, I encourage your AD, your coaching staff to go through there. They're going to have to be cleared by a doctor. So it's a return to play protocol. They have to go to their doctor or a doctor, and they have to release them back to play. So in other areas, people are saying, hey, go get 2 negative tests. The number of negative tests, you could stack them up like cordwood, won't get you back in. You have to have a doctor give you a doctor's release to play.
Here's another question about the number of players. Does 15 include 6 on the court? Yes, it does. 15 would be the entire. However, once again, what we're asking you, this is not a normal year. So take into consideration the limitations at your facility or the facility you're going to be attending. And this is a year where you might want to think about limiting the number as best you can.
I think the difference there is, are you going to play all 15 or 16 or 18 or 20? I don't think the answer for most of you is going to be yes. I think you're going to have a defined rotation, especially bring those young ladies down and then a few substitutes behind that. We're asking you to use discretion at the present time. We're encouraging that as highly as we can. If situations demand it, then we would potentially require that later. Right now, we're not in the bubble. We're asking for your help, and we're asking you to self-limit where you can.
You can also use up into the bleachers. If you look at the NBA, kind of what they've done. The main thing is to spread the folks out. That scorekeeper can move up. And maybe some of those players that aren't going to play can move up a couple of rows and be there close to you.
Here's a question. Still play the best of 5? Yes, the rules of the game have not changed. Okay, so it's still the best of 5. The basic rules of the game have not changed. Obviously, there's a lot of protocols surrounding the game that we're having to take into consideration as we move forward. Here's another one. We've had a couple along this, and we get this call almost on a daily basis. Students are allowed to participate in practice or a game if the campus is offering a virtual option for their education delivery. That is up to the local school. Okay, TAPS is allowing that participation as long as your school is allowing those students who are attending virtually to participate in extracurricular activities.
So I'll give you a couple of comments here, Robert and Steve. Help me to make sure I understand it. If your school is offering a virtual component and a brick and mortar component, and they are tracking the same and they're going on the same day, then what you said is correct. If the school allows those virtual students to come participate, they may. That is a school by school decision. However, if the school goes virtual without a brick and mortar as a result of COVID or illness, then that becomes a different scenario, and we'll deal with that on a case-by-case situation. But should your school have to shut down high school, or should your school have to shut down the volleyball team because X number of students were perceived to be ill, then at that point we'd have to look at it a little differently. But if it's just you're offering virtual and brick and mortar along the same track, you'd be okay to go if your school allows.
We've got a couple of questions related to the visitor choosing the bench. Let's discuss the logic behind that. here's where we have discussed this at length and kind of settled on this. We're saying you have to stay on your own bench. We say you have to stay on your own side of the court. We understand that's not how volleyball is normally played. Once again, we're not in normal times. We're trying to have a season as best we can with limitations in place that make sense. One question that comes up is there might be a difference between the two sides. There might be a disadvantage. There might be something that's relevant to one side of the court that's not to the other. It's not fair that I have to play on that side all the time. If that is the case at your home gym, you are well familiar with that particular situation, and you can practice and you can plan for that particular contingency all day, every day. Your visiting team coming in is going to come in and play probably one time in your gym all year long. So what we're saying is the visitor gets to choose the side. If there is a particular disadvantage, in most gyms there's not, but if there is, then they're not going to be the ones that are going to have to deal with that. You as the home team will be the ones that can plan and prepare for that. With regard to your fans, that's a totally different thing. Both teams are sitting on the same side of the court, so the visitor will pick the side and the bench. And then with regard to the fans, the home facility has that arrangement, and they're the ones that are in charge of dispersing the fans in a way that makes sense. Brian?
As far as disbursement of fans, just remember some gyms only have one side bleachers, some have both. Your traditional home side behind the benches would still stay the same. We're recommending if the benches don't change, there's no reason for the fans to change behind them. That's another reason why we're saying benches stay the same and sides stay the same, because not only do the players change, but the fans. I know it's trite and I know it shows my age, but I can remember Vacation Bible School at Ridgely West. And one of the things that they taught us over and over again for 3 or 4 years was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So being a good host sometimes means you take a little bit of a disadvantage. So your benefit is your hosting. Your benefit is you've been in the facility. We feel like, and it's across the United States. Over half are saying do the same thing, half to the organization. So obviously we're not alone, but we are also encouraging the opportunity here for us to step up. So, we recognize the challenges, we recognize your challenges, but we also encourage you to find the opportunities. This is a great opportunity for us to come through this and show that our teams, our schools, our organization, we can take on COVID and we have a great chance of getting through the end. It's been proven in Major League Baseball. It's been proven in a couple of the other situations. Golf had it happen a couple of times. When you don't stay true to your protocols and you're not diligent all the way through, shutdowns do occur, and they may occur anyway. We may not be able to stop everything that's out there, but we sure want to give it our best try, give it the old college try, and see how far we can get. Robert, you have any more questions before we sign off for today?
I think that caught most of them. Once again, if we did not get to your question or comment, you can reach out to us to info@taps.biz. That's our email. We'll be glad to get back to you there, or you can call us at 254-947-9268.
Folks, you guys as coaches and ADs are our most valuable assets. You are most valued and most prized. We do a great job as an organization of coaches and athletic directors, and just highly appreciate you taking care of the young women that are in your care. Their mom and dad turn them over to you every day, and you get to turn them back when you're done, kind of like the grandparent scenario. You don't have to take them home. But I encourage you to look to the bright side. I encourage you to look to the good. It's going to be a great year once we get started. And I know the competition will return to the form that we have so become accustomed to. So again, thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for being a part of TAPS and the TAPS extended family.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks everybody in the office today. Folks, before we go, I've got a couple of handouts for you. If you need continuing education hours, if that's something that your school requires, we've got a certificate for you in the handout section for 2 continuing education hours. You can download that right now. We've also got a PDF of those 3 ball instructions that we were talking about, and we have an updated flyer pricing offer from Blue Frame Technology. The one in that video was a little old. They now have a $0 price up front and some revenue sharing that's there. So I have that updated information for you to take with you. If you click on any one of those PDFs in the handouts dropdown, it's going to open a new window in your browser and you can download it from there. I'm going to leave the webinar open for a couple of minutes just to make sure everybody has a chance to download them. While you're doing that, again, if another question occurs to you or if we couldn't get to your question today, please send us an email, info@taps.biz, or call us at the office. Don't forget to follow our volleyball account, Taps Volleyball, on social media, and to tag us in posts and share things. We like to see what our coaches are up to and see what our players are up to. It's especially a good idea to share some good news this time. That's it from us. I see some people signing out. I see some people downloading some handouts. I'm going to stay open for a couple of more minutes just so you could download. If you need to get anything, if you weren't able to download it, please send us an email and I can just forward it to you that way. Thank you, folks, and enjoy the rest of your day.